Hello there, people of the internet. It's been raining. We got birds chirping in the background. I'm tired. It's hot. It's humid. It's muggy. I've been working all day, but I feel like coming out and doing some plinking on the gun range. So I got my Mosin Nagant. This right here is a Finnish 1891 pattern Mosin. I specifically grabbed this one because there's no sights on it, and we're at a reasonably long distance. So I figured that'll probably be a good time. Well, actually, I grabbed this because it's, a long barrel, and that means the least concussive blast rifle that I have, if we're talking about the full power rifles that I have. But anyway, there's been a couple of times where I have had a discussion with just a plethora of people, like enough people for me to go ahead and decide to myself, hey, this is probably a good idea to go ahead and make a video on. And I talk about responsible gun ownership. And whenever I talk about responsible gun ownership, there's a lot of people that seem to automatically default to, hey, it's my private property, no gun laws can tell me what to do, I'm a free man. Oh, we got Kevin screaming in the background too. If you guys don't know who Kevin is, he's my peacock. I got 4 of them, they're all named Kevin. But automatically, whenever I talk about the responsibility debate, it automatically shifts to, gun control for a lot of people. And I don't think that these people quite really grasp, they don't really understand that responsible gun ownership, that discussion, is an entirely different discussion than the legalities of being able to own a firearm and do specific things with that particular firearm. Now, me personally, obviously I run a gun channel. I'm definitely biased towards one direction as opposed to the other direction. I definitely have the concept of responsible gun ownership, but I also understand the limitations of the legalities that people have in some certain areas that they might be living in. Like here in the state of Florida, the gunshine state, there's a lot of leeway, a lot of leniency in terms of firearms ownership here, especially in comparison to some other parts of the world or some other parts of the United States. That's just the reality of the place that I live in comparison to some places that a lot of other people live. However, just because I have the legal freedom to be able to do certain things, that doesn't necessarily mean that as a responsible gun owner, I should do those things. Like, for example, in a lot of other places, it is required for you to have your firearms locked up and ammunition separate, and, I don't 100% know all of the laws for specific areas because I live here in the state of Florida, and I never really looked into it, but I do know that there's safe storage laws and things like that, and certain things that you can and cannot do whenever it comes to storing your firearms, and there's certain locking requirements, and there's all sorts of stuff that you got to pay attention to whenever it comes to that. Well, the people in the comments section will say, hey, I can do whatever I want with my private property, and I agree, you should be able to do whatever it is that you want with your private property. However, the idea, the concept, my goodness, we're just having all sorts of fun, aren't we? But the concept of having somebody force you to do something, to be responsible with your firearms, I absolutely despise that. However, it is a good idea to be responsible with your firearms based off of your particular situation. Like, for example, I don't have kids. I live alone. I don't have to worry about basically a lot of stuff whenever it comes to my firearms, and there has been multiple times where I'll be working on something and I'll leave it out on my table disassembled, or I'll be cleaning something, I'll be all right, I'm drunk, it's 4:30 in the morning, I need to go to bed, so I just kind of lean it against my wall and I hit the hay and whatnot. However, if you are somebody who has kids and maybe they are gun curious, maybe keeping a loaded firearm is probably not a good idea if it's not, in direct use as a defensive firearm or under direct supervision by yourself. That right there is one of the examples of it should not be forced legality, but it is definitely a good, responsible idea to keep your loaded firearms out of the hands of children that might, want to get into it. Just because you don't have to do it does not mean that you should decide to yourself, I'm not doing this because nobody can tell me otherwise. That's a really good way to, come home to your son, daughter, child who showed off the gun to a friend, and now you have a bullet hole in your ceiling, or worse, a bullet hole in one of your little mouths to feed. That down there driving around on my gun range is my father on his little side-by-side. Obviously, I'm not going to send lead downrange to my father, and I'm probably going to have to cut this out because he has the radio playing. No worries. I'm glad you're having fun. You have life insurance, right? But let's see, what was I talking about? Just because you shouldn't legally be forced to do something doesn't always mean that it's a bad idea. And here's another example. I know that there's some legalities between keeping firearms in your vehicle in certain areas, and I don't know what those legalities are here in the state of Florida. You can keep, it's a gun-shine state. There's a lot of leniency. But in some other places, like, they have to be separated, gun and ammo, and they have to be locked up in certain ways, and I'm sure there's a lot of legalities that I simply don't know about, so I'm not going to preach about it because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not trying to give legal advice. Well, although I do agree that you should not have to, be forced to lock up your firearms in a certain way inside of a vehicle or inside of your home or in any particular case, there are some times where I think that it would be definitely responsible to lock up your firearms in a way to where they are at least not out in the open. I actually have a friend of mine, he drives a red truck, and he keeps an AR pistol in the door of his truck in plain view for everybody to see. And he's the kind of guy to be like, hey, I'm going into the store over here, I'm going to leave my windows down because it's Florida and it's hot. And I'm just like, God, that's probably not a good idea. You shouldn't, that's one of those things that is like, just because we're allowed to do that, we're legally allowed to do that, which we should legally be allowed to do that, does not necessarily mean that it is the responsible thing to do. And that is the argument that I have with some of these people. Just because, yes, I wholeheartedly agree, private property, we should be allowed to pick and choose whatever it is that we do with our private property. That does not mean that I'm saying, hey, go out and do whatever you want, because I definitely preach responsible ownership whenever it comes to firearms ownership, private firearms ownership here in the United States. If you have kids, or if you have the elderly, if you have somebody who is unstable or on drugs, mentally ill, if you have somebody who you know is a felon that cannot have firearms, if you have somebody that is dealing with something that is in a situation to where you need to keep your firearms away from them, if you have a mother-in-law who's disgruntled and she wants to pawn off all of your stuff and you don't want her to pawn off your Colt Python for $50 down at the pawn shop, then maybe keeping those firearms away from those people would be a good idea, even if it's not Big Daddy government coming in and legally telling you, hey, you have to do XYZ thing with your firearm. That's just a matter of responsible firearms ownership. And it is this level of responsible firearms ownership that gun owners should take. I'm not going to say need to take, because there's going to be exceptions for every rule. But it's this level of responsible firearms ownership that a lot of these gun owners should take. Because a lot of the accidents and whatnot that happen with guns from, private gun owners like you and I are done simply from either incompetence with their firearm, a lack of knowledge of their firearm, or just irresponsibility in general with their firearm. Although it is not, it's very irresponsible to pull out a gun and use it as a prop for a gag or something, especially if it is a real gun, especially if you don't check to see if it is loaded first, especially if you have no idea how to actually check your firearm to see if it is loaded. I see Kevin walking around in the background. So, yeah, we got Kevin down there. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to have to go chase Kevin off so I can send some lead downrange. Here's another good example. A lot of times we have like family get-togethers, and I've got nieces and nephews, and they range from preteen to one that's growing up. My God, time absolutely flies. But whenever they come over, we got people just all over the house and whatnot. So whenever I'm dealing with situations like that, although it is not legally required for me to lock up my firearms, I'm like, okay, we got the kids here, we got the family friends here, we got the family here, we got just this whole mishmash of people. maybe having an entire arsenal of firearms just haphazardly laying around the house is probably not going to be the best of ideas. So that is my mindset behind that. Just because I wholeheartedly agree that no, they should not tell you that you have to do it, that does not mean that you should not do it. There's some situations, wow, I am hungry. I walked over there and I chased off Kevin, and now I can like feel my stomach caving in on itself. There's some situations where just being, deciding to yourself to put forth a little bit more effort than what is legally required as a gun owner could not only save some lives but save money, and you don't have to worry about things getting stolen from you. In the case of like keeping something in your car, don't keep it in plain view, especially if you're going to leave your vehicle with the windows open. Here in the small town that I am in, it's really not that big of a deal, but you go to a larger city and you start having some issues. I haven't shot a rifle in quite some time, and I feel like that's damn near a sin. So that's why we're out here at this longer range. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can hit my steel target down there with a rifle that doesn't have sights on it. I think I hit it. And there's Kevin screaming in the background. Yeah, Kevin likes to scream. That's one thing I don't like about peacocks. Yeah, they make good alarm systems, but man, they scream at absolutely everything. Whew, I tell you what, this long, heavy, cumbersome Mosin-Nagant rifle, although it is pleasurable to shoot in comparison to like an M44 or something like that, I'm hungry and absolutely exhausted. And offhand shooting at, I don't know, we're at maybe 80 yards or so. Kind of a little on the difficult side, hitting that foot-by-foot steel plate down there. Oh, I have no idea if I hit that one. Okay. Well, that was a fun time. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Let me know what you guys think down below. This is probably going to cause some controversy. Typically, whenever I make videos like this, it normally does cause some controversy. So, like I said, thanks for watching. A bunch of links in the description. Whatever my normal outro is here, because I can't remember, because I am half asleep. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I will see you guys on the next episode. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.